Sometimes the strongest thing a woman can do is stay silent. Not every argument deserves your energy, and not every person deserves unlimited access to your emotions. The moment you stop chasing, stop explaining, and stop replying to every hurtful word, people start realizing your value differently. Silence has a way of revealing truth. It exposes intentions, uncovers respect, and shows who genuinely cares about losing you. A woman who learns when to step back protects not only her peace, but also her self-worth. And the truth is, the way someone reacts to your silence says more about them than your words ever could. There comes a point in a woman's life when she gets tired of explaining herself over and over again, tired of repeating how she feels, tired of asking for the bare minimum, tired of trying to make people understand the pain they cause while they stand there acting confused. And for so long, she believes that if she just talks a little softer, loves a little harder, or sacrifices a little more, things will finally change. But one day, something inside her shifts. Not because she stopped caring, but because she finally realized that constantly proving her worth to people is emotionally exhausting. A woman who is always available emotionally often becomes invisible. People get used to her patience. They get comfortable with her forgiveness. They start assuming she will always stay no matter how badly they treat her. And that is where the imbalance begins. The more she chases understanding, the less effort others make to understand her. The more she explains her feelings, the more her emotions get ignored. It becomes a cycle where she is carrying the relationship, the conversations, and the emotional responsibility all by herself. But silence changes things. The moment a woman stops reacting to every disappointing action, people begin to feel the difference. Her silence creates space, and in that space, the truth becomes loud. Suddenly, the people who ignored her messages notice she no longer reaches out first. The people who took her kindness for granted start wondering why she feels distant. The same energy they once overlooked becomes impossible to ignore because it is no longer constantly available to them. There is power in stepping back. Not every battle deserves your voice. Sometimes the strongest response is choosing peace instead of proving a point. A lot of women lose themselves trying to convince someone to care. They think if they explain their pain perfectly enough, the other person will finally understand. But the painful truth is this: people often understand exactly what they are doing. They just never expected you to stop tolerating it. And when you finally stop tolerating it, everything changes. A woman's silence is not weakness. It is often the result of too many chances given, too many tears hidden, and too many nights spent overthinking conversations that should have been simple. By the time she becomes quiet, she has usually already fought for the relationship in every way she knew how. Her silence is not sudden. It is built from disappointment after disappointment. What makes silence powerful is that it forces people to confront themselves. When you stop arguing back, they no longer have control over your emotions. When you stop defending yourself against every accusation, they are left alone with their own behavior. And some people become uncomfortable when they no longer have access to your reactions. They were never interested in understanding your feelings. They were only comfortable having emotional power over you. That is why silence can feel so uncomfortable at first, especially for women who have spent their lives trying to keep everyone happy. The guilt starts whispering in their mind. Maybe I should text first. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe I should explain one more time. But constantly abandoning your own feelings just to maintain peace with others will slowly destroy your peace within yourself. A woman should never have to beg for consistency, honesty, effort, or respect. Those things should come naturally from people who genuinely value her. And the moment she realizes that, she stops forcing connections that only survive because of her effort alone. Real confidence is quiet. It is walking away from disrespect without needing revenge. It is choosing not to respond to messages written only to provoke you. It is controlling your emotions instead of letting others control them for you. Anyone can yell during an argument. Anyone can react out of anger. But it takes real strength to stay calm when your heart is hurt. People often mistake silence for weakness because they are used to seeing strength as loud. But there's nothing weak about protecting your peace. There's nothing weak about refusing to entertain disrespect anymore. In fact, some of the strongest women are the ones who learn how to stop giving energy to people who continuously drain them. And the truth is, when a woman finally learns her value, she stops fighting to stay where she is not appreciated. She no longer feels the need to convince people that she deserves kindness. She no longer lowers her standards just to avoid loneliness. She begins to understand that being alone is far less painful than feeling alone next to people who do not truly care about her heart. Silence also teaches a woman something important about herself. It teaches her that she does not need constant validation to feel worthy. For so long, many women attach their value to how much they are loved by others, how much attention they receive, or how needed they are in someone's life. But healing begins when she understands that her worth was never dependent on someone else's ability to appreciate her. The moment she stops chasing validation, she starts attracting respect. And sometimes the most heartbreaking part is realizing that the people who suddenly notice your absence had countless opportunities to appreciate your presence. They only reacted when they felt your energy pulling away. But that realization becomes part of growth too. It teaches you to stop overextending yourself for people who only care when they feel they are losing access to you. A peaceful woman is powerful because she no longer acts from desperation. She acts from self-respect. She no longer fears disappointing people if it means protecting her mental and emotional health. And once a woman reaches that point, she becomes difficult to manipulate because she understands that silence is not emptiness. Sometimes silence is healing. Sometimes silence is clarity. And sometimes silence is the loudest way a woman can say, I finally choose myself. One of the hardest lessons a woman learns in life is realizing that not everyone loves her the way she loves them. Some people enjoy her attention, her kindness, and her emotional support, but they never truly value the heart behind it. And often, she does not notice this immediately because she is too busy giving. She checks in first. She remembers birthdays. She notices mood changes. She sends long messages asking if everyone is okay while secretly hoping someone will ask her the same. She becomes the emotional glue holding relationships together, believing that love means constant effort. But eventually, exhaustion begins to settle in. There comes a moment when she gets tired of always being the one reaching out, tired of carrying conversations, tired of making excuses for people who never show up for her the way she shows up for them. And when she finally becomes quiet, something very revealing happens. People start showing who they truly are. Silence exposes effort. The moment a woman stops texting first, stops chasing communication, and stops overextending herself emotionally, she starts seeing relationships clearly. Some people never noticed the distance because they were comfortable receiving her energy without giving much back. They enjoyed her presence, but they were never investing in her emotionally. Her silence simply reveals what was already there, a one-sided connection. But then there are people who feel her absence immediately. They notice her quiet energy. They reach out because they genuinely care about her well-being, not because they miss the attention she gave them. And that difference matters. A lot of women spend years confused about who truly values them because they are constantly overcompensating for everyone else's lack of effort. When you are always filling the gaps in relationships, you leave no room for others to reveal their true intentions. That is why stepping back is necessary sometimes. Not to play games, not to manipulate people, but to protect your emotional energy and see relationships for what they really are. A woman should not have to beg for consistency. She should not have to remind people to care. Love that is real does not disappear the moment effort is no longer convenient. The painful truth is that some people only notice your worth when your availability changes. As long as you are constantly there, they assume you always will be. They become comfortable with your presence and careless with your feelings. But when you stop responding immediately, stop making yourself emotionally accessible all the time, they suddenly feel the silence they once ignored. And sometimes that silence hurts them because it forces them to confront how little effort they were giving. A woman often gives chances out of love. She understands people deeply, sometimes too deeply. She excuses bad behavior because she sees potential. She stays patient because she knows everyone struggles. But there's a difference between understanding someone and allowing yourself to be emotionally neglected. Many women stay in draining relationships because they are afraid of seeming difficult, cold, or selfish if they stop trying. But protecting your heart is not selfish. You cannot continue pouring love into people who only appreciate you when they are lonely, bored, or emotionally empty. Real relationships are not built on convenience. They are built on mutual care. A woman deserves people who check on her too. People who notice when her smile changes. People who ask how she is doing without needing something from her first. And silence becomes the test that reveals all of this. When you stop doing all the work, the relationship either grows stronger through mutual effort or falls apart because only one person was holding it together. That realization can be heartbreaking, especially for women who genuinely love deeply. It hurts to realize that some people were attached to your effort more than your presence. But it is also freeing because it saves you from spending years begging for love that should have come naturally. A woman's silence is often misunderstood. People think she became distant for no reason, but they rarely see how much she endured before reaching that point. Before she stopped calling, she probably waited through unanswered messages. Before she stopped explaining herself, she probably repeated her feelings 100 times. Before she became emotionally unavailable, she was likely emotionally exhausted. Women do not suddenly stop caring. They stop trying after realizing they are carrying relationships alone. And there is something incredibly powerful about a woman who finally understands that she cannot force people to value her. She begins to move differently. She stops over-explaining. She stops chasing closure from people who created confusion. She stops shrinking herself just to make others comfortable. Instead, she starts paying attention to actions instead of empty words. Because words are easy. People will say they care about you. They will say they miss you. They will promise to do better. But effort tells the truth every single time. Someone who truly values you will not constantly leave you questioning your importance in their life. They will not make you feel like asking for basic respect is asking for too much. And once a woman realizes this, she becomes more protective of her energy. She no longer gives unlimited access to people who only take from her emotionally. She understands that her kindness is valuable and that not everyone deserves the soft parts of her heart. Silence also teaches a woman to reconnect with herself. So much of her energy has been focused on maintaining relationships that she forgets to ask herself what she actually needs. But when she steps back from constantly chasing people, she starts hearing her own thoughts more clearly. She starts noticing how peaceful life feels when she is not constantly anxious about who is pulling away from her. And that peace changes her, because a woman who finally understands her worth no longer fears losing people who fail to appreciate her. She begins to realize that genuine love never requires you to abandon yourself just to keep someone else comfortable. The right people will not only hear your voice when you speak, they will notice your silence when you are hurting. Women are often raised to believe that love means sacrifice. From a young age, they are taught to care for others before themselves, to forgive quickly, to stay patient, and to keep giving even when they are emotionally exhausted. They become the listeners, the peacemakers, the emotional support system for everyone around them. And while kindness is beautiful, many women slowly lose themselves trying to be everything for everyone. They carry pain quietly because they do not want to seem difficult. They stay in unhealthy situations because they are afraid of hurting others. They pour love into people who barely refill them emotionally, believing that one day their effort will finally be appreciated. But there comes a moment when a woman realizes something painful. Constantly saving others while neglecting herself leaves her empty inside. A woman can spend years being strong for everybody else while silently breaking within herself. She smiles through disappointment, hides tears behind "I'm okay," and keeps showing up even when her heart feels tired. Many people become so used to her strength that they forget she needs care too. They assume she can handle everything because she always has. But strength does not mean a woman does not get hurt. It simply means she learned how to suffer quietly. The dangerous part about constantly putting others first is that eventually a woman begins to believe her own needs are less important. She starts apologizing for asking for respect. She feels guilty for setting boundaries. She convinces herself that resting makes her selfish. And little by little, she abandons herself emotionally just to keep relationships alive. But protecting your peace is not selfish. A woman has every right to step away from people who drain her mentally and emotionally. She has every right to say no without explaining herself endlessly. She has every right to protect her heart from constant disappointment. The problem is, many women fear disappointing others more than they fear losing themselves. So they continue giving chances to people who repeatedly hurt them because they hope things will change. Sometimes love makes women hold on longer than they should. They remember the good moments and ignore the patterns. They focus on potential instead of reality. They tell themselves, maybe if I love harder, things will get better. But love alone cannot fix relationships where respect, honesty, and effort are missing. And one of the hardest lessons a woman learns is that you cannot heal people by destroying yourself. There are people who will take and take from your heart without ever considering how much it costs you emotionally. They will rely on your patience while testing your limits. They will expect understanding from you while giving very little understanding in return. And because women are naturally nurturing, many continue carrying emotional burdens that were never theirs to carry in the first place. But eventually, exhaustion speaks louder than love. A woman reaches a point where she can no longer ignore how heavy everything feels. The late night overthinking, the anxiety, the emotional exhaustion, it all starts affecting her peace. And suddenly she realizes that surviving emotionally is not enough anymore. She wants peace. She wants softness. She wants relationships that do not constantly make her question her worth. That is where healing begins. Healing starts the moment a woman stops feeling guilty for choosing herself. The moment she understands that boundaries are not punishments, they are protection. A boundary is simply saying, I love myself enough not to allow this anymore. And people who truly care about you will respect the boundaries that protect your well-being. The ones who become angry are often the ones who benefited from you having none. Many women struggle with boundaries because they fear being misunderstood. They worry people will call them cold, distant, or selfish. But constantly sacrificing your emotional health just to maintain someone else's comfort is not love. It is self-neglect. A healthy woman understands that she cannot keep pouring from an empty cup. She understands that rest is necessary. Peace is necessary. Emotional safety is necessary. She stops forcing herself to stay in environments that constantly hurt her spirit. She no longer tolerates disrespect just because she fears loneliness. In fact, she starts realizing that loneliness is far less painful than staying connected to people who make her feel emotionally unseen. There is also strength in walking away quietly. Not every situation requires revenge, arguments, or dramatic endings. Sometimes protecting your peace simply means creating distance. Sometimes the most powerful thing a woman can do is stop giving access to people who continuously mishandle her heart. And the beautiful part is that once a woman starts choosing herself, everything about her changes. She becomes calmer because she is no longer constantly fighting for love. She becomes more confident because her happiness is no longer tied to other people's approval. She stops begging to be valued because she finally understands her worth does not decrease based on someone else's inability to recognize it. A healed woman moves differently. She pays attention to actions instead of promises. She no longer ignores red flags just because she sees potential. She understands that love should feel safe, not emotionally exhausting. And most importantly, she learns that protecting her heart is not weakness, it is wisdom. There is nothing wrong with being loving, soft, and caring. Those qualities are beautiful. But a woman must learn the difference between loving others and abandoning herself. Real love should never require a woman to lose her peace, silence her pain, or shrink herself just to keep someone else comfortable. And when a woman finally understands that, she stops chasing relationships that only survive through her suffering. She begins choosing environments where her heart feels valued, her presence feels appreciated, and her peace is not constantly under attack. Because at the end of the day, a woman who protects her emotional well-being is not selfish. She is finally learning that her heart deserves the same care she has always given to everyone else. A woman's energy is one of the most powerful things about her. It is in the way she loves, the way she listens, the way she comforts people when they are hurting, and the way she brings warmth into places without even trying. Some women walk into a room and make others feel safe simply because of the peace they carry within themselves. But the problem is, many women give their energy away too freely without realizing how valuable it truly is. They answer every message immediately, even when they are emotionally drained. They keep giving attention to people who constantly disrespect them. They waste hours arguing with people determined to misunderstand them. They allow negativity, manipulation, and emotional chaos to consume their peace because they think reacting will somehow fix things. But eventually, every woman reaches a point where she realizes something important. Not every person deserves access to her energy. Energy is precious because once it is drained, it affects every part of your life. It affects your peace, your confidence, your sleep, your happiness, and even the way you see yourself. A woman who spends all her time emotionally exhausted by toxic people slowly loses the softness within herself. She becomes anxious, emotionally tired, and disconnected from the version of herself that once felt light and alive. That is why learning where to place your energy is one of the most important forms of self-respect. A lot of people thrive on reactions. They want your anger, your tears, your attention, and your emotional responses because it gives them a sense of control. Some people intentionally create drama because chaos is the only way they know how to feel powerful. And many women fall into the trap of constantly reacting because they feel the need to defend themselves, explain themselves, or prove their worth. But there is power in choosing not to react. The moment a woman stops entertaining unnecessary negativity, she takes her power back. Not every insult deserves a response. Not every misunderstanding deserves your emotional energy. Some people are committed to misunderstanding you no matter how clearly you explain yourself. And trying to convince people to see your value can become emotionally draining very quickly. A peaceful woman understands that protecting her mind is more important than winning every argument. That kind of peace does not happen overnight. It usually comes after disappointment, heartbreak, betrayal, and emotional exhaustion. It comes after a woman spends too much time giving energy to people who only brought stress into her life. And eventually, she becomes tired of carrying emotional chaos that was never hers to hold. There is something powerful about a woman who no longer reacts impulsively. Instead of arguing endlessly, she creates distance. Instead of begging people to understand her, she allows their actions to reveal who they are. Instead of wasting energy proving herself, she invests that energy into healing, growing, and becoming stronger emotionally. And that shift changes everything, because once a woman stops feeding negativity, she begins noticing how much lighter life feels. Her mind becomes calmer. Her heart becomes softer. She no longer wakes up anxious about people who constantly disturb her peace. She starts understanding that silence can protect her in ways arguments never could. Many women do not realize how much emotional energy they waste trying to fix situations they did not break. They overthink conversations for hours. They replay hurtful words in their minds. They carry emotional pain long after others have moved on. And because they care deeply, they often absorb other people's negativity without realizing how damaging it becomes over time. But healing begins when a woman learns emotional discipline. Emotional discipline is choosing peace over chaos. It is understanding that your attention is valuable and not everyone deserves unlimited access to it. It is learning to walk away from conversations that only exist to hurt you. It is refusing to let temporary emotions control permanent decisions. A strong woman does not need to scream to prove her strength. Sometimes her greatest strength is remaining calm while others try to provoke her. There is confidence in emotional control. There's maturity in choosing not to entertain disrespect. And there's wisdom in realizing that your peace is too expensive to be wasted on unnecessary drama. A woman's energy should be invested into things that nourish her soul, not destroy it, into growth, into healing, into genuine relationships, into dreams, goals, family, self-love, and the life she wants to build for herself. The moment she stops giving all her attention to negativity, she creates space for better things to enter her life. And the truth is, the more peaceful a woman becomes, the more attractive her energy becomes too. Not because she is trying to impress anyone, but because inner peace changes the way a person carries themselves. A woman who values herself no longer seeks validation from every person around her. She no longer feels the need to explain her worth to people determined to overlook it. She becomes selective with her energy. She stops overextending herself for people who only show up when it benefits them. She notices who drains her and who genuinely pours into her life positively. She understands that protecting her peace sometimes means saying no, creating distance, or letting go of people she once cared deeply about. And while that can be painful, it is also necessary. Because every woman deserves a life where her heart feels safe. She deserves relationships that bring peace instead of confusion. She deserves to wake up without carrying emotional heaviness caused by people who constantly disrespect her spirit. The most beautiful thing a woman can do for herself is realize that her energy is sacred. Once she understands that, she stops wasting it trying to fix people who enjoy breaking her peace. She starts choosing environments that help her grow instead of emotionally draining her. And in that moment, she becomes unstoppable. Not because she became cold, but because she finally learned that protecting her peace is one of the highest forms of self-love.